This week for our Torah study, the question has come up about Shabbat. So we're going to start a little series on Shabbat. Today what I want to cover is the basic commands concerning Shabbat. So let's go to Exodus 20, verses 8 through 11. Exodus 20 is where you find the Ten Commandments. It's quite a long passage on this particular command. Remember the Shabbat day to keep it holy. 6 days shall you labor and do all your work. But the seventh day is the Shabbat of Yahuwah your Elohim. In it you shall not do any work, you nor your son, nor your daughter, your manservant, nor your maidservant, nor your animals, nor your stranger that is within your gates. For in 6 days Yahuwah made heavens and land, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested the seventh day. Therefore Yahuwah blessed the seventh day and hallowed it, or set it apart. So the first thing that we see here is that we're supposed to keep it holy. Holy means devoted to God. We're supposed to be praying 3 times a day, but in addition to that, we devote 1 day a week to God. It's similar to the tithe. The tithe means that a portion of your money belongs to God, and a portion of your week belongs to God. Now, this means that the activities that you do on this day should be activities with God. This would also include activities with the congregation, because the congregation is trying to help us all get closer to God. So those are the kind of activities that we're supposed to be doing on this day. The kind of activities that we're not supposed to be doing is work. Now, activities that are dealing with God, you can say that that is a kind of work. So we have to differentiate between which kind of work we're not supposed to do and which kind we are supposed to be doing. So in verse 9, it says, 6 days shall you labor and do all your work. So that's obviously talking about your secular job, the job that makes you money. That job is for yourself. It is to gain money for yourself. We also have chores that we do in order to provide things for ourselves. So what we see here is that for 6 days we do things for ourselves, and then on the seventh day we do things for God. Meaning, and there's really nothing you can do for God since He has everything, right? But what that means is we're doing things to get ourselves closer to God. The next, one other thing that I would like to mention in here, it says that you're not supposed to make other people work. This is important. When we get to it, we're going to see that that includes buying and selling. So let's turn next to Nehemiah 10:31. Nehemiah 10:31 prohibits buying and selling. And if the people of the land bring wares or any victuals on the Shabbat day to sell, that we would not buy it of them on the Shabbat or on the holy day. So we had people who are not doing Shabbat are selling things on the seventh day, and we are required to not buy or sell from them specifically. Okay, this is a typical problem that Shabbat people have. They like to go out to the restaurant on Shabbat, and that is specifically forbidden. The next command is Exodus 16, verse 29. The second part of that verse reads, "Abide you every man in his place, let no man go out of his place on the seventh day." The word place is a very general term. It is not defined in Scripture. So the question is, well, what does it mean exactly? Does that mean to stay in your house? Does that mean to stay in your city? What does it mean? The rabbis have defined it as 2,000 cubits or something like that, which is about a half a mile. And but that's very arbitrary. Okay. Let's jump over to Jeremiah 17:24, and we'll get a little bit of help in defining this. Jeremiah 17:24 says, "And it shall come to pass, if you diligently hear unto me, says Yahuwah, to bring in no burden through the gates of this city on the Shabbat day, but hallow the Shabbat day, to do no work therein." So bringing a burden into the city is kind of helping us to define this idea of staying in your place. So you'd stay in your city is basically what it's saying. Okay? But it's also specifically stating to not carry a burden through the gates of the city. In other words, for a long distance. Okay, so we're getting some very specific commands concerning what you cannot do on Shabbat. And of course, this all goes back to setting the day apart to God. If you're setting the day apart to God, then you're not going to be doing secular things. You're not going to be buying and selling. You're not going to be carrying burdens, distances. All of these things are things that you're not going to be doing logically if you are setting apart the day to building up your relationship with God. The next command is in Exodus 16:23, and this specifically forbids cooking. Tomorrow is the rest day of the set apart Shabbat unto Yahuwah. Bake that which you will bake today, and seethe that which you will seethe, and that which remains over lay up for you to be kept until the morning. So this is explaining that what we're supposed to be doing is we're supposed to be doing our cooking on Friday for the noontime meal on Shabbat. And so that the meal that we're going to be eating on Saturday is going to be a meal that we have cooked already. This means that we're going to have to cook it ahead of time and keep it on a low fire to keep it hot. Or the other option is to put it in the refrigerator and heat it up for the meal, but it has to be on a fire that has not been kindled on Shabbat. And that, of course, is the next command that we're going to get into. But before we get into that, let's go over to Exodus 12:16. Exodus 12:16 is talking about Passover. And it's dealing with a situation where you have the Saturday Shabbat and the Passover Shabbat right next to each other. Okay, so it explains how you deal with this situation. And in the first day there shall be a set apart convocation. That's talking about the first day of unleavened bread, which is a Shabbat, meaning that you're not supposed to work on that day. And in the seventh day there shall be a set apart convocation to you. That's the seventh day of unleavened bread. No manner of work shall be done in them, except that which every man must eat, that only may be done of you. Now what he's saying here is that on the holiday Shabbat, if you have a Saturday is the next day, then it's okay to cook your food for Saturday on that holiday day. Okay? Because normally what you're going to do on a holiday is you're going to cook ahead of time like you do for the Saturday Shabbat. But if you've got these two holidays backed up to each other, you can't do that. And so what he's saying here is that the holiday Shabbat is taking precedence, or the weekly Shabbat is taking precedence over the holiday Shabbat. So the weekly Shabbat is a higher holy day than the yearly holidays, which is very unusual in our way of thinking. Isaiah 58 connects the idea of fasting and Shabbat in Isaiah 58:13 through 14. If you turn away your foot from the Shabbat, from doing your pleasure on my holy day, and call the Shabbat a delight, the set apart of Yahuwah honorable, and shall honor him, not doing your own paths, not finding your own pleasure, nor speaking your own words. And there's a not in there that's missing. If you do not turn away your foot from the Shabbat, is what it should read. Then shall you delight yourself in Yahuwah, and I will cause you to ride upon the high places of the land, and feed you with the heritage of Yaakov your father, for the mouth of Yahuwah has spoken it. So here he's connecting this idea of, he's talking about delighting, right? But in Isaiah 58, there is, he's talking about Yom Kippur specifically as a Shabbat. And what he's saying is that when you fast, the whole point of fasting is to get closer to God, which is exactly the point of Shabbat, is to get closer to God. And how is it supposed to be? It's supposed to be a delight to you. The rabbis teach that if it's supposed to be a delight, then you have to have a warm meal on Shabbat in order to delight in it, right? You have to have a very nice dinner on Shabbat. But we know that that's not true because Moses fasted for 40 days, which means that he fasted on Shabbat. So that is not a requirement. But the point here is that we're supposed to delight in Shabbat. Okay, I am going to end right there. We're running out of time, and talk about some more of the commands as we continue.